Today is May 11th, 2005, and we're at the Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa, Idaho. Today we're going to interview Marshall Smith as part of the Veterans History Project and the Library of Congress. My name is Stan Hobson, and our cameraman is James Turner. Now, Mr. Smith, if you don't mind introducing yourself and where you were born and when.
My name is Marshall Smith. I was born at Kilgore, Idaho, June 17, 1918.
Glad to have you here. We appreciate you doing this interview and sharing your experiences in World War II with us. You were born in 1918, so in December of 41 you were 23?
About that.
About
yes.
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was in Boise, Idaho.
Doing?
I was in the military then. I enlisted in 1937, and I was at Gowan Field. I was in the first cadre of military men that opened up the air base at Gowan Field.
So you were in Air Force
In
in 1937?
Yes.
Okay, that was the Army Air Force at that time.
It was Army Air Corps.
Air Corps, that's right. That's
was
right.
sworn in.
Yeah, okay. And what was your
Rank?
What was your responsibilities?
I was flying as an engineer radio operator in a Martin B-26.
Okay. How did you get to qualify as an engineer, a flight engineer?
Well,
You graduated high school in Kilgore?
No, I was going to school at Pocatello, Idaho as a college student, and I ran out of money the first term. And somebody said, hey, why don't you go down and talk to the recruiting sergeant? So I went down, and I used to fall for this line. I've learned since that. He said, oh boy, a smart young man like you, I didn't think it showed with my coat button, get into the Air Corps, and that's just a hop, skip, and jump into West Point. You go to West Point, they pay you for a 4-year college education. When you graduate, they put a gold bar and they call you an officer and a gentleman. You get paid all that time. You don't have to. I couldn't hardly wait to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
The fly in the ointment was in the 9th Corps area, which is considered most of the western states. They had 30 appointments for West Point. Of that, there were 300 of us applicants. And they graded on a Harvard curve. You know, most questions answers number 1. And I was number 50. That was 20 numbers short of West Point. So I didn't go to West Point. But in the Air Corps, then if you were an eager beaver, which I was, and anything that come along that had schooling, I'd sign up for it. And you can get a wonderful, diversified education. I signed up for mechanic school, got to be a airplane mechanic. Then but a mechanic stands on ladders and works on airplanes, and I wanted to fly. To get on a combat crew, I had to be something else. So I went to radio operators and repair school, qualified for that, got on a combat crew, and got to fly as a combat crew member. And to answer the question originally, my mechanical experience, my radio experience, qualified me to be an engineer when they were breaking crews in to the Martin B-26. You know, 3 a day in Tampa Bay. It didn't have the peacetime operating record was poor. It was a very short-winged airplane and no visible means of support. They called it the Baltimore Whore. You can delete that if it's
No, that's all right. That's what they called it.
And I rode through the only airplane crash that I've ever been in at Gowan Field in a B-26. And the main reason that they were keeping me on in an engineer's position was it had the old electric propeller that run away a lot. And there had to be somebody there that could switch generators and keep it from running away, or to help the crew get it back around and on the ground. On this particular crash, we were taking off on runway 10 left to switch to the east. And the prop runway immediately on liftoff. The co-pilot was a brand new second lieutenant, had been schooled in nothing faster or bigger than a T-6, which is a single engine airplane. He had no multi-engine time. And the captain or instructor, well, he was a first lieutenant, but he was the pilot, wasn't widely experienced in it. The co-pilot froze. And the pilot was a little excited too, but he called for emergency, and we went to the left-hand pattern and back around to land on 10 left. At that time, just to the west of 10 left was a cut where there was a bridge across the New York Canal there, and kind of a cut in the ground. Then the fence and the inverted V, the hog trough as they call it, at the end of the runway. Well, as it was running away and the co-pilot didn't know what to do, when it went over 2,700 is pretty near the top of the range of the engine. And I reached up, it was the right engine, and pushed the feathering button, which reduced the RPMs on the engine. When it come down within workable, so I'd pull it back out. So the engine was going roo, 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 roo. And we come around, and I was handling and calling out airspeed to the pilot because he was busy flying the thing. And we undershot the cut. That bent the gears up so that they rubbed against us landing gear struts, blew both the main tires. Then we went through the fence and the hog troughs. That got we hit pretty hard, and that got the nose wheel. So now we're on rims on all 3 wheels. And we run off the runway to the side, to the left, and when it stopped crunching, I reached up and wiped the master switch off and ducked out of the airplane. The other 2 gentlemen followed me. And we didn't walk, we run away from the airplane, probably 200 or 300 feet, I'd say. And here come the fire truck and the ambulance, you know. And we were already out of it in the airplane. It didn't catch on fire. And of course they rush up to us and with the question, "Are you all right?" Well, we were standing there. We felt all right. And of course they, you know, the medics, they look at you pretty close and say, "Are you sure you're all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And then I wiggled my left foot a little bit. It felt kind of juicy. And I pulled my trouser leg up, and blood running out of the top of my shoe. There's that much blood. So I pulled my trouser leg on up, and I had slash tear through the bone that was bleeding pretty good rate and running into my shoe. Apparently I was standing between the seats and the step, and the impact caused me to hit the corner of the step, wounded my knee. Of course, I mean, you know, if they've got blood, why immediately they put you on a gurney and lay you down and make sure you don't go into shock or something like that and haul me off the ambulance. At the hospital, they gave me a shot of morphine or something like that. It really hadn't hurt about anything. I had no sensation of pain. And the doctor sewed it up and said, "Are you feeling okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I think so. I'm fine. You want to sit up? Sit up. You want a glass of water or something?" "No, I think I'm okay. I sure would like a smoke." At that time, I was a cigarette smoker. So I said, "We got one," and the medic, and here's one. And I tried to light it, and that's when I got the shakes. I mean, I couldn't make the cigarette and the lighter and everything get into my mouth. So the medic says, "Here, open your mouth." And he grabbed the stave and stuck it right here in the middle of my mouth and lit it. It says, "Puff." I went, the best taste of cigarette I ever had in my life. I mean, it was wonderful. And very shortly after that, why, they helped me on my feet. I was feeling pretty good. And we went down to operations, I think, and interviewed, I don't know, whoever it was that wanted to know about the crash. The airplane never flew again. The right wing was 26 inches out of rig. There were 4 large wrinkles in the fuselage from the impact. And of course, the wheels were ground down considerably less than the diameter. Tires had been flopped off.
Yeah.
And that's the only crash that I've ever been in.
Well, you've laid a good groundwork for us, but we got to go back and pick up from a little earlier. You know, I mean, you got us into, I don't know what year that is yet, but we will.
That was just before Pearl Harbor.
Okay, but why did you enlisted in the Air Corps because you ran out of money at Pocatello? Okay, where did they send you for boot camp?
They sent me to Salt Lake City and the Army, and I
Fort Douglas.
Fort Douglas. And I got sworn in there and issued, at that time it was the leggings. They didn't even have slacks. It was wrapped leggings. And I was sworn in, and then I was assigned to Hamilton Field, California, which is just out of San Rafael, and given a ticket, and I was on my way. It was an interesting trip.
By train?
By train. By train to Oakland, by ferry to San Francisco, by ferry over to Sausalito, then by bus, by trolley or something like that, a railroad train again, up to San Rafael. Off of that, on a railroad or on a bus, and they dropped me off the bus at the place where they turned off the highway to Hamilton Field. I didn't have anything in sight, so I walked towards Hamilton Field, and when I got to the main gate, I walked up the main gate, and a soldier that was a guard there thought I was his replacement, I guess. He said, "Where in the hell have you been?" And before I could answer him, he says, and he was taking these wrap off his arm and undoing his gun, you know, and boy, I thought, I've heard about Army efficiency. This is really putting you to work fast, see? And he's getting the belt around so I can get this 45. And he's mad at me because I'm late for his release. And he said, "Did you eat before you come down here?" And I said, "No, sir, I just got in." And then it started coming through his kind of keen alert mind that we were both mistaken in identity. I thought I was I didn't know an officer from Adams House Cat. I mean, I would have been on the main gate for crying out loud. No training.
How long did you stay at Hamilton?
An airman?
At Hamilton Air Base, how long were you there?
Air Base, I think I got a promotion in about a year.
Were you there a year and a half?
Yeah, about a year, and I got PFC. Well, the ratings went very slowly.
Uh-huh.
You start out with $21 pay, and out of that laundry come $2.50, and you had the rest of it to spend wherever you wanted to. I had gone to work. The first sergeant, I'd been assigned to the air base, and the first sergeant, the first thing I did was a month of PKP.
Mm-hmm.
After KP, they put me out with about 10 other people who had already been in recruit drill, learning squads east and west, you know, right face, left face, and all that stuff. And I just got in the middle of them and imitated everybody, and so I missed a month's recruit training. But as it so happened, I was able to get by, and we all got out of recruit training, and then I was taken from 5th Air Base, which was a base service squadron, and assigned to the 11th Bomb Squadron, which was just across the parade ground. And I went to work for there. They asked me, could I type? And I said yes. And the first sergeant needed a clerk. So, of course, I mean, that helped me to get a promotion, I guess. I didn't brown nose, but after I got that, why they needed somebody, I never knew how that happened again. And they took me back over to 5th Air Base, and I drilled a whole summer. I went out as, I think they promoted me to corporal and 2 stripes, and I was drilling recruits. Went out there, you know, attention.
Yeah.
Right.
Forward march also and so
all
forth.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had never had any of that, but
seemed to work.
it seemed to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
After that, I went back over to the 11th Bomb Squadron the summer of being a recruit trainer, and the first school that come up was a mechanic school. I'm kind of a gearhead, and I love that, so I applied for it and got it. Got out of the office, went to school, learned how to.
Where was that?
At Hamilton Field.
Same there. Same place. Okay. How long was the school?
6 months, as I recall.
Okay. And when you graduated from that, where'd they send you?
Then they assigned me to the line, give me a job working for one of the crew chiefs. And
what kind of aircraft were you working on?
they were Martin B-10s, B-12s. The old Martin, the 4.5 seat.
Single engine?
Twin.
Twin, okay.
It was a bomber squadron, 11th
Okay.
bomber squadron.
Yeah, okay.
The insignia was Jigs, the funny papers, you know, Maggie and Jigs.
Oh, yeah.
Carrying a bomb
Yeah,
under his
yeah.
arm. And I did that for about a year. And then I was enjoying it. It's a good job. I mean, you know, I was learning how to maintain and keep an airplane wiped down. The first thing you do is you clean cowling.
Mm-hmm.
When you clean cowling, I mean, you clean it so that there isn't, you can't even take a toothpick and find a drop of oil any place on it. It's not clean, it's spotless. And that was an interesting job. Our line chief, who was in charge of all the crew chiefs, was a master sergeant who was named Kermit Dunning. And Kermit had a
Cleft palate? Yeah.
He didn't talk very good. We loved him. He was a neat guy. I mean, he was no everything had to be right. But Kermit, and everybody in there could mimic him. I mean, he'd come up and he'd say, "Listen, Ted, the airplane will go fly at 3 o'clock."
Yeah.
And you knew it was. But when it went out on the line to fly, if he went out there and if there was a spot, even after they run it up, come out here and boy, I mean, we probably damn near wiped the paint off them things, keeping them clean. And they got dirty easily because the old push rods on that engine that was around the radial engine didn't oil from the engine supply. It oiled from a grease gun fitting on each cylinder, two, one for the intake, one for the exhaust, with a grease gun. All 9 cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, they had an opening for radio school, and I wanted to be a radio operator to get into combat.
So you could fly.
So I could fly.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on a combat crew. And when I graduated, I went back to Chanute. That was about a year's.
Where was radio school?
At Chanute Field, Illinois. And it was an interesting school.
How long was that?
That was a year.
That was a year. So we're into 1940.
38.
38, 39?
39.
Yeah, okay.
When I come back,
You got out of radio school and where'd you go?
back to squadron,
Oh,
and I got on a combat crew.
okay.
But I'm in the Air Corps yet.
Yes, but you say you were on a combat crew.
Yes.
The war wasn't going on yet.
Well,
So
combat crew, when a crew went, well, you flew training missions.
okay.
And I was radio operator.
Okay, all right.
And along about that time, they were trading off the B-10s and B-12s for a Douglas B-18.
And that's
fact-
what you were on?
That's what I was on.
A still 2 engine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
twin engine. It looked like a fat stomach DC-3.
How big a crew?
Let's see, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, radio operator, engineer. How many is that?
5 or 6, huh?
6, yeah.
No armament
No.
other than bombs.
Well, they had a couple of swivel guns, but when you're...
The rest of the crew doubled as gunners?
as gunners.
Okay, all right. And how many, what was the bomb load you could carry, that aircraft?
Oh, I don't recall. I think about 200 or 250 pound bomb load was the heaviest bomb, and the bomb bay opened up underneath the cockpit. The cabin was
okay.
above the bomb bay.
Yeah, all right.
And from the air, you didn't. You couldn't see the bombs like a B-24.
Oh, okay.
It was not accessible by the airborne crew.
Did you do bomb training? Is that what you were flying
Yes,
for? Okay.
we were going up, and we were taking practice bombs, which I think is about a 100-pound little blue bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 3 or 4, 4 feet long, with a fin on them, and enough powder or explosive in it. And so when you dropped it down, you could see the impact, and there was a thing that went through the drift meter that you could hook a camera on. The drift meter was up by the navigator, and take pictures of it, and that's the way you got your score
Okay,
as a crew.
yeah. You were part of a crew that
crew.
that it did not
They didn't change around.
change around. So you and a pilot and the whole crew was one unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a radio operator for crew, and if they crewed up differently, why then you were in that crew for a while. Sometime during the early part of that, they needed a radio operator over at Presidio in San Francisco, Fort Presidio.
Yeah.
And as an Air Corps, they could assign you any place in the Army. It was Army Air Corps. But Presidio was infantry. And because I'd had a good code speed and was apparently got good grades, and well, I studied hard.
Mm-hmm.
I was an avid student. I studied hard. I didn't do like I did in high school. I really was getting myself. And they assigned me as a radio operator for, I think, about 3, 4, 5 months, something like that, working WAR, which is a worldwide net for Army communication. It was all continuous wave, dot and dash, you know. And they assigned you to I think it was about 8 or 9 on a shift. And we had a little booth with a typewriter, headset, a key, and a bug, which is got a floppy thing on it, and a volume control. We didn't even tune the radio. We were on a fixed crystal control frequency.
Uh-huh.
But this booth had a call signal. And if somebody on the whole net around the world called and gave you your code signal and said, "I've got a stack for you," and you'd come back and say, "Go ahead." And the traffic was being handled about 20 words a minute, and it was 5-letter code groups. It wasn't clear text. Very rarely that you used language you could understand. And you'd say, "Go ahead," and then you'd type it out. You'd receive for it, put it in your outbox. And I think the shift, I believe, was an 8-hour shift with a half hour to get a bite to eat and a couple of 15-minute breaks for the little bathroom, have a smoke, something like that. This
was kind of a radio center for the Western United States?
It was, yeah.
Uh-huh.
An interesting thing about the first time that I was on shift, and there was a sergeant in charge of it, and the people, after you got used to it, the introduction, the top line, they'd go through it just as fast as on a bug, you know, from just a buzz. And it said, "I've got a stack," and I said, "Go ahead." It was hash. So I broke him, you know, held the key down, wait, repeat. And he did the same thing. I didn't get it. So I said, "Repeat and slow down." He did slow down. And at that time, I was so rattled I couldn't have copied my own name in clear text. And finally, all he did, and I was copying that, okay, he had JKRJ, 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 JK, a whole line of JKRJ. So I said, "Wait." And I called the shift sergeant over, and I said, "Well, what's your problem, soldier? I'm snowed under over. I felt very diminishing." And he said, "I'll got it." So he got on there and got on the thing and copied the message off. And he said, "You'll be all right, kid." And he said, don't worry about it." Of course, I was a bundle of worry. And when I got a minute, I said, "Okay, I blew that one high, wide, and handsome. But what does JKRJ stand for?" I was copying that. He said, "Oh, that's a slang expression I'm not supposed to use." And I said, "Well, what do it mean?" It said, "Jesus Christ, put on an operator." JKRJ. But I got salty after a while, and then I could, you know, if they give me a stack of outlets, I'd get on there and I'd send it back on the bug, and then I'd slow it down to about 20 words a minute and hammer it out. It was educational experience.
5 months you were there.
5 months, something like that.
And where'd you go from there?
Back out to 11th Bomb Squadron, back on a combat crew to fly,
Okay.
which I like much better.
Yes.
And from there, we moved up to Salt Lake City,
The whole squadron?
the whole squadron. And we broke up, and we lived up at Fort Douglas. And I don't remember what we were there, about 3 or 4 months, I think, and they split the squadrons up. They made cadres and formed new organization out of the basic 11th Squadron.
Were you still flying in Salt Lake?
I was still flying as a radio
Out of the,
operator
where was the air base?
out at the airport.
Airport, yeah. So Fort Douglas is quite a ways.
Fort Douglas, where we lived, and
Yeah.
we went out
Yeah, okay.
and did our
Okay. So they broke you up into other
into
groups.
squadrons, and then the squadrons.
What year was that?
Well, let's see. When was?
Are you in 40 now?
No,
Not quite?
not quite. It was probably
39.
39 in that
Okay.
neighborhood.
All right.
Because I was at Gowan Field when Pearl Harbor.
Okay. All right. So did you go from Salt Lake to Gowan Field?
Salt Lake, we went to Gowan Field, yes.
Okay. You and your crew, or
Me and my
several
crew.
crews?
Yeah.
Okay.
And from there, we changed airplanes, got rid of the B-17, or the B-18s,
Mm-hmm.
and got the Martin B-26,
Okay.
all new airplanes.
And was there any training to qualify in a B-26 for you?
For me, no, it was the same.
Same radios?
Same radios,
Okay.
trailing antenna.
Same size crew?
Pretty- no. Pilot, co-pilot, bombardier,
Navigator?
navigator, and the radio operator was a dual assignment. He was an engineer radio operator.
Okay. All right. And you were
And
qualified
I
for that?
qualified. I was dual qualified because I'd been to mechanic school. And,
Yeah, right.
And so there wasn't a lot of transitioning. That Curtis Electric prop was a big mechanical thing on it.
The B-26 carry the same payload, bomb load as a B-18?
I don't recall. It
Okay.
was bigger bomb bay, as I recall.
And faster?
A lot faster.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a lot faster airplane. It was a cigar-shaped airplane.
Yeah.
And pretty fast. It was.
How many aircraft were assigned at Gowan?
I don't remember. In the squadron that I was in, I think we had 6.
And of the 10 in the squadron, how many would be flight ready at any one time? There's a lot of them
after
down.
Pearl Harbor, where they had every ship on the line out there, and we sat in the airplane a lot of the time until they finally moved us out. In the first place,
This was after Pearl Harbor, you said?
after Pearl Harbor.
Okay. Well, let me get to your crash first, and then.
Well, the crash was in the early part of the training.
Okay. So this was still in 39.
Yeah, and well, early 39 and last to 38 or something like
Okay.
that. I mean,
all right. Yeah, that's all right.
It all
That's okay.
stacked together
Yeah,
because we went first. They split us up, and we went to Paintfield, Agony Air Base, up by Everett. Mud, cold, tents, a mess. Then they moved us.
Was that an assignment or?
Yeah, that was a assignment.
Okay, how
They
long were
moved
you
the
up there?
squadron out.
Okay.
We were going to split up again, and part of us was going to Alaska, and part of us was going someplace to combat, I guess. And in that thing, they moved part of us down to that's the name of the airport there, south. Anyway, the squadron commander got a secret assignment. And he picked me as a radio operator. He asked me to volunteer. He said, it's a secret. I can't tell you what we're going to do. I just want you as my radio operator. I'd flown with him a couple of times and pleased him. And we crewed up with a B-18 and went to Duncan Field, Texas. And they put in radar for the American radar, but it wasn't yet. And from there, they sent me back to MIT to charm school to be a radar operator and repairer. But after I got out of school at MIT, the English, who had a crew already formed on an LB-30, and they were all Cockney English, and so they farmed me out from the Air Corps to go and do submarine patrol because they already had the radar, the scope, and everything on it. And I flew with the English crew. We were divided by a common language, but that's another story. I'm a Westerner. I drawl. I think slow. I listen slow. I'm in low gear. I'm a tractor. And the English are, they're 110 miles an hour. And they'd walk up to me or something like this. And I say, mate, what's the date today? What? What's the date today? Partner, you're going to have to slow that down and spread it way out. Okay. What's the date today? Well, it's the 11th of May. Thanks, mate. You're more than welcome. They were kind to me. They were just a bunch of kids. They'd killed off all the senior people over there. And they were over, we were all together then, and we were on submarine patrol because the U-boats were killing our shipping. In the nighttime, practically the whole East Coast was lit up with burning shipping.
Where were you flying out of?
Every place from Bangor, Maine to Puerto Rico.
Oh, really? Okay.
They moved us wherever there was a sub reported.
And how long would you be in the air at any one time?
I think it was about 5 months.
Now, how long a flight would any one flight be?
Oh, any one flight?
What's the range?
8 or 9. They were flying us bow-legged, as long as we had fuel.
Okay.
And we flew about anywhere from 50 feet to 500 feet. And as a radar operator, well, they needed me, so they were nice to me, I guess would be the way I'd put it. Because I'd say 5 degrees left, and they'd turn it 5 degrees left, and that would bring what I thought was a target or more to the middle. And then as you would get near, if the waves were real choppy, you would be at a lower altitude. You'd start getting hash, and the target would disappear and just hash, because you were getting a reflection from your radar wave going out and reflecting back to you, and say, can you raise it up 500 feet or 100 feet? If it raises it up and the target would appear again, then you say, okay, I got the target. Now, good 5 degrees right. And when we'd get within a quarter of a mile or so, I'd say you should start being, and the bombardier had one of our northern bomb sites. But you know what he used for bomb site? 2 pieces of masking tape, like that. And we were dropping depth charges, which didn't, it looked like a 50-gallon drum, but it didn't even have fins or anything on it. It just probably half scrap iron and the rest dynamite. And it had apparently a pressure switch. So it would go down, I'm guessing, 50 feet or in that neighborhood, and then it would blow. It never did geyser, because as soon as we dropped, why, we'd sharp and turn around and see, you know, and the water would bubble up, but it'd just make a large mound of seawater where this thing, when it blew. And subs would throw up everything, you know, scraps and oil and stuff to try and make us think they were all right. But we would mark that on our maps, and I say we, I didn't mark it, the navigator did that, all that stuff. I'm still back here on the scope dope. But then we'd return to it because we knew that they could only travel so far underwater when they dived, and then they had to come up and charge the batteries. And I think they could run underwater, as I remember, something like 12 hours. Mm-hmm. So we would all get there. It would be out on the map, and the navigator would say, "We're getting the end of the thing. We're going to turn." And so I'd just sit there until it got the wings level, and I had something that could make sense of, and then I'd say, "Okay, I'm okay on the scope," and I could search a little bit. I couldn't see behind, and as I recall, our scan was about a 45-degree right or left.
Okay.
It wasn't as good as the later radar, but it was the best we had, and that's what we used.
Yeah. Did you get any subs, do you know?
We got credit for 3, but the credit arrangement was the Navy had to come and find some wreckage that they could identify that was broken up, or the crew would, sometimes when they'd get, the idea was a concussion would break their ability to navigate or to dive, or they'd sink or something. If they'd surface, why they'd show up as a target, and we'd report it, and the Navy'd come out in what they call that Kennedy boat. They'd come out and get the crew and take over. We had one that actually brought the boat. It was down pretty close to Langley, and they brought it back into Cherry Point, the sub and the crew and the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
But that's the way you got credit. Otherwise, unless you had to prove it, you just reported that you dropped your depth charge on it.
You just got probable.
And probable.
Yeah.
But we did have a marked effect on the effectiveness of the U-boats.
Close in, anyway.
Yeah. Then,
how far offshore could you fly?
oh, I would say probably 25 miles. And
right.
we were, the shipping was then pretty close, north and south. And the convoys, the Navy would send along destroyers to
escorts.
To escort the convoys that were going across the ocean.
And you had aircraft similar to you overlapping your area, all up and down the coast?
No, no. For a while, we were the only liberator in the area. They had trained that many people, and we weren't set up. Then about 5 months of that, and they formed the first Sea Search Attack Squadron or group down at Langley Field, and I transferred away from the English crew down there. And in the meantime, I had applied for the, I was a tech sergeant then, I'd been promoted up. I'd applied for cadets because I'd looked at the back of Nike's flight crew, and really the pilot seat's the best seat in the house. And I'd applied, but moving around on different assignments, why a lot of my paperwork failed to catch up with me, I guess. But at Langley Field, after we'd formed the first Sea Search attack group, and Colonel Bill Dolan, who was the boss of it, called me to his office, and of course I snapped to a big figure 4, you know, "Good morning, sir." He was a gentleman and an officer, great commander. He was killed later ferrying airplanes over to England, but he said, "I've got a warrant here for your Master Sergeant rating." boy, broke up in a big grin, mile wide. But I'm not going to give it to you. Grin disappeared. And he let that soak in for a minute, and he said, but I also have your appointment into the Flying Cadets. Congratulations, Thornton. Thank you very much, sir. So I went into cadets.
What year was this?
I graduated in class 43D, the spring of April.
April what?
April, I soloed in 42 in September, and April of 43.
43,
Yeah.
Okay. So how long is this flying school?
Oh, I think it was
Where was it?
about 9 months.
9
I
months?
recall, yeah.
To solo?
9 months, as I recall.
For ground school or the whole
No,
school?
for the whole thing.
Okay.
They would push you through.
Where was it?
Well, I started out in pre-flight. Was in can't name it. Alabama, I believe.
Okay.
And then in pre-flight, I went to Albany Field in Georgia for flight training. I had been in pre-flight. They had tryout for cadet officers, and I had tried out. And I have a noisy voice, and I had had all that recruit training behind me. So, and what they wanted to do was get people, all fancy stuff on, and then you carried a saber instead of a gun, instead of a rifle, and you didn't march out your demerits. You could sit in your room when you got demerits or gigs, and so many gigs, and you had an hour on a parade ground if you were, and or you sit in your room. But the gun wasn't. You didn't have to clean your saber. It was, pretty easy.
You were one of the older cadets, weren't you?
I was one of the older, more mature cadets. I was about.
Did they get a lot of cadets from the enlisted ranks, or?
They got a lot of cadets from ROTC.
Yeah.
The ROTC were militarily trained
in the colleges.
in marching and parades and all that stuff. And of course, my background is from Hamilton Field was a big boost to me. And I was lieutenant. I was not the squadron commander. I was platoon lieutenant. I went all the way through cadets as a cadet officer, and finally in advance, I was a squadron commander.
Okay. What? Where in this schooling?
Well, we went from Albany to Keyfield, Mississippi, to Georgefield, Illinois, in advance.
Okay. And to when did you make your decision to go multi-engine versus single engine?
In basic, I applied.
Okay.
For
you preferred multi-engine since you had flown in the bigger craft.
I had flown in multi-engine and long range. I thought that a career as a pilot, I was hoping for a career as a pilot. As a career as a pilot, that I would have a better chance as a multi-engine pilot than I would as a single-engine pilot.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
The airline as a sideline, or in the military.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seemed like it was a
okay.
better career.
When did you get your wings?
1943.
You said?
Yeah.
You remember the month?
No.
And where were you?
At Georgefield, Illinois.
Illinois, okay. And you were commissioned second lieutenant?
Second lieutenant, yes, sir.
And then where'd you go?
I was kept at Georgefield and assigned as instructor.
Okay.
A 4th squadron.
How long were you there?
A little over a year. I had instructed 2 or 3 classes, and then they promoted me to assistant operations officer in the squadron.
First lieutenant then?
Pardon?
First lieutenant then? Or
No.
Still second?
No, I was still second.
Okay.
And then from that, they put me on the advisory training board. There was 4 of us on the advisory training board. I moved around a lot. The advisory training board gave all the washout checks for cadets.
Mm-hmm.
They'd send, when you flunked the squadron check, you flunked the group check, then the advisory training board was in the system. If you didn't make the advisory training board, you were through.
Washed out and back in the...
Washed back and went to bombardier school or navigator or
okay.
Whatever.
All right. Now, in that, was the washout, what was the name of that board or...
Advisory training board?
Advisory training board.
Yeah.
You'd fly the washout mission in multi-engine aircraft?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a multi-engine field.
Okay, all right.
We had AT-9s, AT-10s, AT-17s, and T-6s.
Okay. What was the average age of the pilots that you were doing the washout flying with?
18,
19 years old?
Just kids.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. Okay. What percentage of them washed out? High or
Over
low?
50.
Okay.
To begin with, the washout rate was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The class that I started out in, my class, there was 124 of us started out in pre-flight, and I think there were 24 of us got wings. You filled the squares in, you went fast, you see it.
Yeah.
That you show you once. You did it, you didn't make it. You started out on a washing machine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that as a check pilot in AT and the advisory training board, that I was able to salvage some cadets. I'd get another instructor, maybe move them from one, transfer them from one squadron to another, get a new, new whole thing. Washouts were treated with a disdain that a picked on chicken is. Everybody, I mean, if you washed out, you're dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very diminishing experience for anybody who did wash out, of course. And I didn't have them report to the advisory training board. They'd say, go down to Squadron 8. I've got a ride for you down there. And I had a pair of flight coveralls that I managed to keep just clean enough to pass inspection, but dirty enough so I looked like a buck and scratcher. And we could wear pretty much a baseball hat or something. And I'd go down and go in the back door in the instructor's door at the squadron where the cadet was there. And then I'd say, have you got your cadet out there in the ready room? I said, yeah. What's his name? Get his name. And I'd go out and say, is Mr. So-and-so out there? You call cadets or Mr. Yes, sir. Well, I guess you and I get to go doing some flying. And I looked like another buck instructor, as far as he knew. I didn't say, I'm down here to give you a flight check or anything. I just said, we've got to go do some flying. So we'd go out there, and I'd say, well, we'll go. I'll kind of call off what we would do as we go along. First of all, I want you to pre-flight the airplane. I'll help you if you need some help. And we got on, and we go out and fly. So the student, hopefully was put at ease, because he wasn't aware that there's a check ride, which is a nerve breaker anyway. And number two, I didn't look like I was anybody important to amount to anything. And if you called them up and they had to go in Class A's and come up and you had a whack that was a secretary, and he'd have to report to the secretary, and then he'd have to come into your office, and
You're already on edge.
The poor guy was done before he got
Yeah.
even in his coveralls. I mean, and happily, the percentage, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Happily, on the track record of the ones that I did not do, made on through, got the wings. I had a little bit of a cross-up. One time it was a general's son. He couldn't fly for sour milk. And I got the word down from, the brass up on top. He's got to pass.
Yeah, pass him.
He's got to pass. I said, the people that I pass will be passing on their ability, nothing else. Green eyes, big breast, family, nothing else. And he didn't pass. We sat down when he flunked his ride, and both of us sat outside and talked about it, and both of us cried, I think. But I told him that wasn't personal or anything, but in the limited time that they give you, that I could not, in all honesty, say, I'll send you out there because I think your ability, as I see it, is where you'd kill yourself and the crew.
Yeah.
And we can't afford that in the war.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very sorry. And I'll pray for you. But you haven't made it. And he started crying, and I started. I'm a
You're a softie.
sympathetic barfer,
Yeah,
sympathetic crier.
Okay. Now, and how long were you on the board? About a year?
Yeah, in that neighborhood.
Okay.
It was probably less than that because
So we're into 1944?
not.
You got your wings in
About
43?
44, yeah.
All right.